All right, so once again, we are here for the Youth Program Quality Initiative information session for the 2023 to 24 school year. As we go through, if any questions pop up, feel free to ask in the chat or unmute and interrupt. That is fine. We just did a quick warm welcome, and then we'll get an overview of what the goals of this initiative are, and then we'll dive into really what the process looks like throughout the school year. Then we'll have time for questions at the end. And again, feel free to ask questions throughout as well. So our main goals for this initiative, we have a few. The first one is to increase availability of high quality programs serving school age youth in Alaska. Second is to learn about the supports that programs need, and so that we at the network and state level can learn how to best provide those supports. We want to inform the development of a sustainable, continual program quality improvement process. This is our third year kind of doing this process with programs, and we're trying to improve it every year. And we want to develop shared goals, common measures, really a shared language around evaluation methods so that we can increase youth assets and skills. Because there's a lot of different types of programs in Alaska, right? And so having those shared languages and shared measures really lets us compare apples to apples, whereas different programs might be looking at apples and oranges if they're using different systems for evaluation. We also want to develop a culture of continuous improvement. There are programs all over the country, if not in every single state, doing very similar initiatives to this. So this is really something that a lot of programs are doing, and we really want to build it into the culture of programs. And finally, we want to foster a professional learning community among diverse youth serving organizations. And we find it's really helpful when you all get to connect with other organizations and see what different types of goals and things you are all dealing with in your programs. And really, why are we here? So first and foremost, after-school programs are a safe place for youth to be. And when we can start building in some of those quality pieces, the data shows that the higher the quality of the program, it really helps build youth outcomes, positive youth development, and build some of those protective factors. So higher quality, better youth outcomes. That's really the why behind all of this. So just kind of a really high level view of the process. It has three main phases that we go through throughout the year, and we'll dive a little bit deeper into each of these. But first in fall is the assess phase, where an assessment of your program is done, and you collect data through the assessment. And then at the end of fall, you move into the plan phase, where you're sitting down with the data from your assessment and creating goals and an improvement plan with your program team. And then in spring, really January, February, March is kind of like the 90-day improvement plan, where you're carrying out your action plan from your goals. There might be some training involved and also some coaching sessions with us just to kind of keep the process moving and keep the momentum going with your goals. So we're going to start with the assess phase. And first we're going to talk about the tools, and then we'll talk about how the assessment works. So there are a couple different tools that can be used in this process. The first is the school age program quality assessment, which is for grades kindergarten through sixth grade. Excuse me. And then secondly, there is the youth program quality assessment, which is very similar to measure a lot of the same things, just slightly different for the different age groups. That is for 4th through 12th grade. And then there's also a third tool called the social emotional learning PQA, program quality assessment. That is kind of a higher level of kind of like the next step up from the YPQA and the SAPQA. And we currently have the ability to do external assessments and support part of that process, but we're still in the process of building our repertoire and some of the trainings that go with the SEL tool. So we're hoping to officially offer that as part of this process, hopefully starting next year. But the other piece with that as well, coming out of the pandemic too, we're really encouraging programs to start with the YPQA or the SAPQA to really ground themselves in those core principles before kind of moving up to that higher level engagement in the SEL tool. Are there questions on what the tools are before we kind of move into what the assessment options are? Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, Aaron, I was kind of curious, how different is the school age program quality assessment versus the YPQA? We've been doing the YPQA here at the Science Center for a while, but it's kind of curious how different it is.
So between the school age and the youth?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so they're very, very similar. If you've been using the tool, you're probably familiar with this pyramid of program quality on the right. That's kind of the visualization of what the tool measures. It's a lot of the same scales, a lot of the same items. There are just a few items that are changed or added between the two, like the reframing conflict is called managing feelings and looks a little bit different in the younger age one. And there's just a few things like that, but they're really very similar.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And Aaron, I'm going to jump in. This is Thomas.
Mm-hmm.
Brian, I think you might be have been using the SEL tool and not the SA tool. And maybe I'm wrong, but I think Campbell Creek Science Center pre-pandemic was doing some work with AYDC around the social emotional learning tool. So that is a significantly different tool. They are structured the same way, use the same pyramid of program quality. The SEL tool, in essence, moves some of the elements, the relational element and interaction elements from the school age tool and the youth tool to a higher level. And so we've been encouraging several programs that were previously using the SEL tool because of the disruption in learning with the pandemic and just our own disruption in switching back the past year and a half to being in person. We've been really encouraging folks to reground themselves first on the school age tool and the youth tool to have that kind of a strong understanding on that before moving back up to that SEL tool. Now, that's not to say that your program might not be ready for that. That's something definitely we're open to be in conversation with. But right now, this fall, we are encouraging all programs to start with the school age tool or the youth tool. The big difference between those two tools is the age range, school age being kindergarten through 4th grade, youth tool being 4th through 12th grade. And you can see there, sorry, I think I said that wrong, kindergarten through 6th grade for the school age. You can see there is an age overlap because we know, in particular in a lot of our Alaska schools too, sometimes 4th, 5th, 6th grade, maybe high schools or middle schools, sometimes as in elementary school. So that's why there's an intentional overlap on the tool.
Thank you.
Yeah, and like Thomas mentioned too, the SEL tool, there are some significant differences. There are a few scales and items that are pretty similar and a couple that are the same as the other two tools, but most of it is quite different and dives a lot deeper into management of social and emotional learning in the program. All right, so that is a little bit about the tools. So next is about how these tools are used. So in fall, you and your team would attend a training called PQA Basics, where you and your team would learn about how the tool works and how to do either a self-assessment or someone from the network would come out and do an external assessment. So you would get trained in using this tool, so you're not just kind of thrown into it with no context. So there's a self-assessment where your program, your staff, or whoever is on your YPQI team would conduct a self-assessment. So whoever is doing that assessment, it might be a staff member, it might be management, it might be a mix of the two, will take a day to observe program and take objective notes throughout program. And then you sit down with the team of everyone who observed and you score the tool. If you're not familiar with what the tool looks like, it's basically a gigantic rubric with different indicators in it. So you're scoring your notes from your observation on the tool. And there's an entire training on how to do that. And then once you have your tool scored, someone from your team will enter the data from your assessment into our online data management system. So that's the self-assessment. For an external assessment, someone from the network like myself or Thomas, or some programs have someone on their team who is also certified to be an external assessor with the PQA. So that's also an option if you have someone on your team who can do that. They will visit program for a day and watch and take notes and then score the tool. And then the next day we sit down with the staff and walk through the tool and all of the scores so that you get a picture of kind of what we saw and where things are at. So both of those options end result is you end up with data from your assessment. Questions on that process before we get into what we do with the data? Not seeing any. Okay, so okay. Hi, Regis. Regis is joining us from Pilot Station with the Rate AmeriCorps program. Welcome, Regis. So This next part is kind of a side optional piece. So we have the school age, youth, and SEL tools that are kind of like that observing program and scoring the tool. This is kind of an optional side piece that is more meant for management, and it's the organizational quality assessment. And this is measuring items at the organizational and management level that are supporting the items that are happening in the YPQA or in the SAPQA. So this is what's happening at the organizational level that is supporting what's going on the ground. And this looks like one of us from the network sitting down with management and just walking through the tool, and kind of like an interview process. We go through the tool and just score it together to see what things are going on in the organization that are supporting the things in the PQA that would be happening on the ground. And this one, it's optional. We encourage programs to do it their first year going through this process with us, and then every few years unless there's major staffing turnover. And then same thing at the end of the interview, you end up with data that can be used in the next section of our process. So this slide can be a lot to look at, so I'm going to walk you through it quick. This is our timeline for the assess phase in the fall. So in August, we get together with program managers, site leads, just kind of sit down, make sure everybody's on the same page and knows where they're starting at. And then next, you and your team would attend one of these 3 trainings. So these 3, it's not all 3, you just attend one of the 3. If you're using the youth tool, you would attend the Youth Program Quality Assessment Basics. For school age, you would attend this one. Or if you're familiar with the tool, you've used it before, and you just need a refresher, we also have a 1-hour option called PQA Basics Essentials, where we just kind of refresh some of the stuff that is talked about in these 2 longer trainings. There is also the option if you're using the school age tool, but you can only make it to this one or vice versa. The 2 trainings are quite similar, that if that was your only option, you could attend to the other one if needed. So you just attend one of these 3 trainings with your team. And then sometime during fall, September through November, that's when your fall program quality assessment would take place. That's where either your self-assessment that you're doing with your team or one of us from the network would come do an external assessment. And then again, that kind of side organizational quality assessment piece would happen sometime in October. And then our deadline for getting the assessment data into our online data management system, we're shooting for the end of October, but we know sometimes some of those assessments do creep into November. So really, this is all happening in the fall. Any questions about the assess timeline? All right. So after your assessments, you have data. So you have your scores on your tool, and then with our data management system, it spits out a really pretty little data report. So with that data, you and your team would attend a planning with data workshop, either live in person at our conference in November, or we also offer it online. So either of those options. And you're sitting down with your team, looking at the data and finding some areas for growth that you and your team will set some goals around. And I'm going to give you a quick preview of what the data could possibly look like. So what you're seeing is actual data from last school year, and there's different levels of data. You can see there's site level data. You can see your site level next to what the organizational level would be. This would be like if you had, I'm just going to use 21st century as an example. Say this was charities Yakus level data, and then the organizational level data would be all of Juneau 21st century's data. And then we have our statewide data, and then this dark green is a national sample. And this is this high level categorical data from the tool. So this isn't getting into the nitty gritty pieces yet. So say you're at this planning with data workshop and you notice, oh, this is scoring a little bit lower than the state norm. We want to look a little bit deeper into that. So then you can go down to the next level. So this is supportive environment. And you can kind of zoom in, supportive environment. Where in supportive environment aren't we scoring so high? And you can kind of go in and look and see, okay, these couple areas. And then you zoom into the next level right here. And you can go in and see the individual items on the tool to see, okay, what are the things that are actually going on in program that are the things we would want to address in order to get that score up. And those would be, these individual items are the items that you and your team would be setting goals around. So
And I just wanted to jump in for a moment.
yeah.
So one of the things I wanted to share with you, so first off, and I think Aaron's already said, this is the free process. So we provide the trainings all for free and the tools for you. The main thing that I want to reiterate, you can do any of this work on your own independently. You can either incur the cost, that's totally fine. You can even listen into our stuff. We are okay with that. The database part is really one of the key things. I know some programs that can feel uncomfortable, like, ooh, someone else has my data, especially in the age of data being everywhere and data privacy constantly being in a news headline. So our data collection, no one else receives that data other than us. It is compiled into the state database. So that way we're able to do things such as look at, okay, we are noticing across the board, if you could go back maybe to the slide that had the 4 charts next to it, would be great, that one. So across the board for us, what we are looking at the network level is looking to see, on the state level, we are doing actually really great across the state over the last 2 years around safe environments, around supportive environments. I'm not surprised. That has been a big focus on coming out of the pandemic, is safety and rebuilding supports. We are a little behind the national norm at the state level on interactions and engagement. We're expecting that because, again, with the focus the first few years out of the pandemic around really getting our young people back in programs, making sure our programs are physically safe during the pandemic and the students are feeling supported, that we're expecting to see that. But that allows us at the network level to know what other supports might other programs not in the process also use. So really for us, the state data sample and you engaging in the process helps better inform our information on how to support the field of after school and out of school time programs to ensure that that there's relevant training, curriculums, and resources going into the field, as well as investments. So I just wanted to share a little bit about that and how the data at the bigger macro level for us also helps support the work across this field. So again, even if you're not involved and you decide this is not the process for you, or you want to do it independently, you're still able to receive the benefits of the YPQI because others involved are sharing into that state data set that helps us better define what are the tools and support programs need across Alaska. Thank you.
Yeah, and like Thomas said, all of our trainings, and we'll come out and do assessments for free. For this whole data management system, it is $75 per site to use. So programs that are able to, we are asking to try to contribute towards that $75 per site, but we are also open to looking for other funding options for sites that may be restrictive to. So that's really the only cost that would be involved with this entire process. Okay, so back to our planning timeline. So you receive your data at the Planning with Data workshop. And if you've done an external assessment, you'll have walked through the data already with your external assessor. So there's a couple options. There is the in-person version, which we're planning to offer at our November, in-person at our November conference, or we can also do an online version as well for those that can't make it to the conference. If you've gone through this process with us before and you've done the entire Planning with Data workshop with us before, so in your second or third or following years, and if you don't want to go through the entire process again and you're feeling comfortable with the goal setting process with your team, we are offering a 2-hour version of that workshop as well. And then, so after you've sat down with your team and looked at the data and made some goals, you're entering those goals into that same data management system. The idea is to have it in before you leave for winter break. So we put 12, 21, 23 on here. So you have your assessment, you have your data, you set a goal, and then you go have a wonderful winter break. You come back from winter break and you enter the improve phase. So this is January, February, March, kind of like a 90-day improvement period is kind of how we're looking at it. And during this improvement period, we're going to be hosting a community of practice, kind of where it'll just be a Zoom call of a bunch of sites getting together and kind of sharing where they're at, getting the momentum going to really dive into the improvement process. And then during the improvement process, that's going to be you all carrying out your the action items on your goals. This might involve trainings. These are 10 trainings that align with different parts of the PQA tool that we put on. So say your team scored low in asking open-ended questions. You may send your team to the Ask, Listen, Encourage training. This is where you are, again, fulfilling your goal. There might be trainings involved. And then the other piece is we also offer optional coaching sessions. So you may wish to sign up for 1 or 2 calls with me or someone from the network where we just kind of check in, see where you're at with the goal, really just kind of keep the momentum going and see if any supports are needed around it. So again, we're doing that professional learning community at the beginning just to kind of get the momentum going, make sure people didn't forget about their goals over the break. And then you're implementing your goals and checking in with us. And then we're also offering those 10 trainings. And we schedule all those trainings virtually, but we are also able to put them on. If there's a whole team that wants them, we can do it either virtually or in person, depending on your location as well. And ideally, your team will attend whichever of those trainings makes sense for depending what your goals were and your scores were on the PQA. And so we recommend that teams try to attend about two to three, depending how many goals you've set. So then, end of the school year, we recommend doing another spring assessment, either self or external, just to kind of see where the growth has happened, to get the data to see if your goals been met, or see what maybe some other things will be before to think about as you start thinking about the next year. And then at the end of the whole process, we have a gathering of all the sites, anyone who wants to come. That was part of the process where we celebrate growth, look at some of the data from throughout the year, reflect on the whole process, which helps us with the quality improvement of this whole process. And that is kind of the overview of this whole process. I know it can be a lot to take in, so I will pause there for questions. Okay. So we have a few eligibility recommendations. We're looking for programs that meet 3 to 5 times per week for 2 to 3 hours a day throughout the school year. There are some programs that have that are only summer programs that we do kind of provide some of these supports for, but it looks a little different for specifically summer programs, but we kind of tailor the process to the school year model. Looking for programs that provide services to at least 20 youth. I know Alaska is kind of unique. We have a lot of really small programs and rural programs, so we are doing this process with some smaller programs, so that's kind of a loose guideline. And then it's also ideal if there is at least 2 staff in the program to do the process with. So to apply, I have our website on the screen and in the chat box. But on our website is all of the information I just word vomited at you. There is a document that is a call for applications. If you want an easy way to share this information with your colleagues, you can send them the call for applications. There's also the link to apply. The application is a SurveyMonkey, and it'll just ask for your organization information and then information about each of your sites that you want to participate. And then there's also a button for a training request. If you don't want to go through this whole process with us, but you want some of the trainings or other pieces, you can request a training from our website as well. And then I also noted at the bottom that the $75 fee that I mentioned earlier that we can work with if that's something that may be restrictive for you. Anything to add, Thomas?
Yeah, just the big part I would want to say is, so we recognize that the best laid plans sometimes go awry, as we have all experienced the last several years. So really for us, the YPQI process has on-ramps and off-ramps. It's okay if and you sign up and then something shifts in your organization. We know buildings change, we know staff change, things like that. If it's not feeling like the right time, that's okay as well. You know, there may be parts where, again, you just want to come on for some of the training and come back off, or maybe you want to do just one of the assessments and not both the reassess phase. That is a-okay. I would say some of the other value adds that our process gives is besides just the being part of a state data set that you're getting to look to see how your program compares to others in the state, is that it also provides a lot of tailored support. So we are here, whether that's Aaron, myself, or anyone else from our team, that have the ability then to really do that coaching support and do that follow-up around like, hey, how is the implementation of your improvement goal going? If you're having struggles or challenges, or you're like, I could really use this resource to improve my warm welcome, or I'm having a difficult time with getting my session flow or getting kids re-engaged in activities. Those are all things that we're able to provide coaching for you. That's all free service that we provide. We cover the cost of that. And it's really just, we're here as a support for program providers. If any of you have other questions as well, you can either ask them now, or we're happy to also answer any of those questions later on in the process. If any of you need to feed this up to your supervisors as well, we will have this recording posted to our YouTube pages, and we'll send this out to all of you. But we're also happy to clarify any follow-up questions there. Our dates and parameters are subject to change, as well as the application, because we recognize some folks might not be ready to say yes right now. The MOA, really what that MOA is doing for us is just letting us know approximately how many sites we're going to have in the process. So that's what the application is about, to help us gauge what is our capacity internally at the network that we need to support folks. Last year, we had started off with about 40 sites that have signed up. Due to a variety of factors, staffing, COVID, a few other things, we really wound up with a little over 30 sites that were in the process. That's okay. It just, again, the application process helps us estimate about how many sites we're going to be working with.
Okay, so yeah, now would be a good time to ask questions. And here's kind of the overview of the whole cycle again, to refresh your memory as you may think of some questions. And then my contact is also on the slide as well, if you think of something later. So Charity, hi Charity, I know I just saw you last week. So this whole thing, I think this was probably hopefully useful for you to get more of a context of the assessment we just did. But like the application piece for this is something that Amanda would be doing, and then your site would be one of the sites within that application. So I won't worry about that from your spot.
And if there are no questions, I think we can be done early and everyone gets a half an hour back of your day. If anyone does need, so I'm looking in particular at my friends up north in Fairbanks, Kat and Allie. If you'd like, we're happy to give you a training certificate as well.